This is...
Meet the ocean.
Are we recording?
I'm pretty sure we are.
A sailor,
Walking through the sea of Adelie
The
penguins.
oceans are the biggest carbon sink of all.
Welcome to Meet the Ocean. I'm your host, Paul North, and today we're talking about whales. Whales! Whales! It sounds good any way you say it. This is because the volunteers of the Alaska Whale Foundation gathered around a microphone while at their field station in southeast Alaska. And what did they do? Well, they picked each other's brains. They spoke their curiosities. They asked questions, which, happens to be a big part of being a scientist. And their little Q&A session was so good, in fact, that we decided to make it its own episode. Because whale researchers asking each other about their specialities is about as good as it gets. So get ready. Before we dive in, though, some announcements from the Meet the Ocean ecosystem of educational outreach. Can you hear them off in the distance, celebrating on the ice, perhaps? It's the Penguins from Meet the Ocean's Penguin Pen Pal program, a recent winner of an Anthem Award for programs in environmental awareness. The Anthem Awards celebrate purpose and mission-driven work, and our penguins are flipping out because they won the bronze medal. Please check out the rest of the deserving projects at anthemawards.com. And keep in mind, Meet the Ocean is a 501c3 nonprofit. You know, the do-gooders. And it costs dinero to keep ink in those typewriters the penguins are using, to keep these microphones plugged in, yada, yada, yada. So to put it bluntly, as leopard seals are known to do, we need help. Join our creative conservation by signing up for a monthly donation. Or maybe share our free educational content with a young person in your life. It all helps us to continue building this community and inform the next generation of ocean advocates. Now, our last exceptional announcement, uncoincidentally, has to do with the Alaska Whale Foundation. Because on March 3rd at the Faena Hotel in Miami, Florida, this podcast host will be moderating a fundraiser for their organization. AWF founder and my good friend, Dr. Andy Szabo, will be there with his collaborator, Kate Fleming, founder of the Bridge Initiative. Meet the Ocean produces media that highlights scientists and the research. And the Alaska Whale Foundation has featured on our podcast more than any other project. They have a special place in our heart. They deserve your support. And personally, I cannot wait to dress up all fancy-like and go to Miami to help some whales. As always, conservation requires movement. So head to our website to find more podcasts, underwater creatures, and ways to donate at meettheocean.org. And now, on to our episode.
Hi, I'm Sonia Feinberg, and this is my first summer interning with Alaska Whale Foundation.
Hi, my name is Martin Van Eswegen. I'm a PhD student at the University of Hawaii. This is my fourth summer up here with AWF.
My name is Annie Bartlett, and I am also an intern with AWF this summer.
My name is Rihanna Thurber. I am a second-year master's student at Oregon State University, and this is my second summer up here doing research with AWF.
My name is Dana Block. This is my fourth year with AWF, and this fall I'll be starting a master's program with University of Alaska in Fairbanks.
This is a question for anyone who wants to answer. What is one of your favorite things about humpback whales?
I think the different feeding techniques we've seen, certainly over the last, at least my 4 years that I've spent here, just the different ways that they come up with to catch different types of prey, the different types of bubble nets they use, their maneuverability with these big 15-foot pectoral fins. They can get really close to shore, and they're able to utilize these different techniques to manipulate the environment around them, but also to corral their prey, which they can be slippery little suckers that are not easy to catch, I would imagine. So to me, that's been one thing, especially having never been on a feeding ground for humpbacks before. I was really keen to see that, and it's exceeded my expectations and how clever they can be, and how they're using their energy to be more efficient and to gain all that mass that they need later on for migration. So that's been a highlight.
I think for me, one of the things I find the most intriguing about humpbacks is mainly the fact that they're one of the world's most commonly watched whale, but yet there's still so much we have yet to learn about them. And one of my favorite things is their vocalizations. So prior to all of the experience I've had up until this point, and especially prior to starting at AWF, I had heard the vocalizations, the singing that a lot of people know about in the breeding grounds. Humpback whales have these very beautiful, elaborate songs, and what I find utterly fascinating is that these songs change from year to year, yet we still don't know who the composer is. Like, at what point did they decide to change the song? Who changes the song? And also some of the vocalizations I've heard in the competition groups where males are fighting for female affection or the chance to mate. And then up here in Alaska, in the feeding grounds, you don't hear these elaborate songs, but as we talked about previously with the bubble knitters, you hear these vocalizations prior to them coming up to lunge at the surface. And what's so cool is how each whale has a vocalization. No two vocalizations from a whale sound the same, but yet we don't know which whales are always vocalizing in the groups. And what's fun when you listen to these acoustic recordings of bubble knitting is there's also a lot of chatter going on. There's all kinds of grunts and groans and clicks and all kinds of fun noises coming out of these animals. So their vocal range from the breeding grounds to the feeding grounds is very well documented, but what I find most intriguing is we still don't really know what it all means, and so the kind of elusiveness of this species is really intriguing.
And the fact that their songs are so beautiful and impactful and significant that they were included on Carl Sagan's record that he sent into space is pretty spectacular.
And it was the vocalizations that really sparked the Save the Whales movement when they were first recorded back in the 70s, or those vocalizations were released back in the 70s. It really gave a voice to the whales, and it really prompted people to start thinking, like, wow, we should actually really be protecting these species, because they're so much more than just a big giant animal in the sea. You know, they have very complex lives that I think really sparked a lot of curiosity in people.
I like their shape. I know that sounds really silly, but they're lumpy and bumpy and have absurdly long pectorals that they use for all sorts of really interesting maneuvers. I think they're really fascinating to watch because they're, as I said, lumpy and bumpy and don't look very streamlined, and yet, as Martin was saying, they're feeding in all these really precise, nuanced ways, and they can turn on a dime and swim really far really fast and launch themselves out of the water and dive deep and emit really cool songs. And they're just these like kind of blobby looking whales that are beautiful and exist in the ocean. And then my other favorite thing, which is kind of true of all wildlife, but because I'm drawn to whales, I think, and especially humpbacks, is very especially true for me. It's really cool to observe behavior like bubble netting and have or see a whale breach 100 times in a row, have this really spectacular experience, and then be sitting at the field station and have the realization that that's just the natural world and that's going on all the time, even when we don't observe it. It's kind of a silly thing, but I think it feels pretty cool.
As interns here, as this being your first time with the Alaska Whale Foundation and seeing humpback whales up here in the feeding grounds, what is one thing that you are most excited to see, and what are you hoping to learn up here?
I think for me, I'm Annie, by the way. I don't know if that's necessary. I think for me, in my undergrad, I did a lot of work with data processing, humpback whale acoustics, and that work is very rewarding in and of itself, but to be able to come here and participate in field work, which I had worked on a whale watching boat before, but I, had never really had the opportunity to be in the field up close and personal with these animals. It's just a completely different perspective and gives me the opportunity to learn a lot of really amazing, useful skills and an experience that not many people can say that they have with animals that are so significant to a lot of people. And I feel very grateful to be able to be here in this really special place with these incredible animals, seeing so much amazing things, so many amazing things.
This is Sonia. I studied sustainable design in undergrad and always thought I wanted to be an architect, and only in the past couple years realized I would actually love to be a marine biologist. And the first time I realized I wanted to study whales, I was listening to this book, Deep, by James Nestor on Audible while on a long road trip. And he was actually talking about sperm whales and their vocalizations and communication and how they work together. And I had to pull over my car because I was like hyperventilating by how cool it was. Like I just couldn't physically stand how cool whale communication and collaboration was. So for me, the biggest highlight so far of this internship is hanging out with people who know so much about whales and answer all of my questions and tell me that they're all good questions and have to answer because we're on a very small boat together for a very long amount of time. And I'm just learning so much. And I'm still trying to figure out what I want to study for graduate studies, and there's so many questions that can be answered, and I'm at this exciting beginning point of looking at all of those questions and figuring out what I'm most drawn to, which right now is everything. So I got to figure that out.
I think it could also be helpful just to give you a short overview of how we actually collect data. Sonia just alluded to it, but we are based in the field station in Warm Springs Bay, and we have two vessels. One is a 17-foot Zodiac, and the other is a 26 but 28 feet with a bowsprit foot aluminum skiff that has a cabin that we can comfortably sleep 3 and cozily sleep 5 in. And usually we survey off of the Zodiac, but recently the engine has been exploded, so we've been surveying off the metal boat. But we go out, and as Rihanna mentioned, we go out for several days at a time, and either we'll set up base camps on islands and do our best to avoid bears, or we'll anchor the metal boat and sleep on that, and we'll exist together for we live together in the field station, so we are very used to each other's habits, but we also sleep and work within feet of each other when we're on these surveys and get to know each other very, very well. So it's quite a cozy and intense experience, but it's all worth it for the sake of the whales.
Yeah, working in remote Southeast Alaska, to collect these kinds of data, you're working in the elements. Sometimes it's really pleasant, beautiful, calm, glassy, and in the flick of a switch, it can become quite gnarly in Chatham Strait and places. So often it really does require teamwork, and if you have a whole group of people on this boat together, squished a little bit like sardines at times, it really speaks volumes to the type of people who come here and help us out to collect this important information. Not every day is glamorous and pretty and beautiful. Sometimes you have to really take on some big seas and get drenched for 10, 12 hours in a day with no cover. So it really takes special people to do this kind of work, and the type of commitment involved from different people is always amazing to see. And we're always so thankful to have wonderful people helping us out, because end of the day, it's teamwork makes the dream work. So yeah, we're very lucky with that.
And I think on top of that, what Martin and Dana just talked about is whether it's camping or long days in the field, not always favorable weather conditions. One thing I think I've really gotten, especially from last year and I will from this year, is so there's days where you kind of just think to yourself, oh man, what are we in for? You're exhausted, everybody's tired, but you push through. But in hindsight, when you think about the amazing things you've gotten to see and experience, and those are things that, me personally, I will never take for granted, and they will be kind of memories and experiences that I will always cherish. And so sometimes you have to take a little bit of the bad weather and the hard days on the water, but in the long run, you've really gotten to see and witness things that most people in this world will not. So it's definitely very worth it in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, even on a, quote, bad day, you're still sitting on the water, likely near whales with majestic towering mountains around you. So even as the rain is pouring, it has a sense of beauty. I also think it's important to mention that we don't just spend all our whole time on the water, hanging out with whales, enjoying the views of Southeast Alaska. We spend about half our time also in the field station behind computer screens, crunching the data. So I think whale work looks very glamorous, and I would speak for myself, but probably for everyone else, saying that we consider ourselves incredibly lucky to be here. But it definitely can be, it is a lot of work, and it's not all glamorous looking. There's a lot of mundane feeling data crunching that goes into it, and a lot of people have put a lot of time into all the data that we've collected. So thanks to everybody who's put in all that effort, because it's a pretty robust, incredible data set and has taken a lot of work from a lot of people.
Yeah. And to add to that, certainly all the different people who've come and helped us out in the past, all the different collaborators we have working on the various projects, whether it's here in Alaska or Hawaii and elsewhere, Oregon. And at the end of the day, it's about protecting not only the whales, but this entire ecosystem around us, terrestrial and marine, against a whole bunch of different threats in the future. And it's a common goal. And one of the key things AWF tries to do is create these stewards for the environment by putting them in this environment, both at the fuel station in Warm Springs Bay and out on the water, having that level of passion, commitment, and putting these things in place to become projects and eventually data and findings. It all comes together to, at the end of the day, create people who are trying to make a change in a world that is currently changing at quite a rapid rate. So that's what we aim to do.
This episode was produced by Paul North and Andrew Gettings, with sound designed by me, Kelsey Anderson. Many thanks to Sonia Feinberg, Martin Van Aswegen, Annie Bartlett, Rihanna Thurber, and Dana Block for sharing their stories. Like Paul stated at the top, join Meet the Ocean, Bridge Initiative, and Alaska Whale Foundation on March 3rd in Miami for an evening of conservation and cocktails. Head on over to eventbrite.com for tickets. Speaking of fundraisers, things are brewing in Las Vegas as Meet the Ocean continues to blend performance with conservation. Stay tuned for an end-of-March fundraiser at the brand new Nevada Rhythmic Academy space. Phew, that's a lot of events. But it also shows that we're not sitting on our flippers. In the meantime, connect with us on our website, meettheocean.org, to see where we're swimming off to next. Until next time, may the salt water be with you.